What do you do when the person who signs your paycheck starts taking your dignity instead? And if every complaint is routed through him, how do you fight a gatekeeper of justice? He said the company was a family, then closed his office door and spoke like a debt collector. A favor for a favor, he smiled, tapping a file that decided my next month's rent. Every no I offered cost me hours, shifts, and the projects I'd earned. My inbox shrank while his messages grew bolder, time-stamped after midnight. Co-workers praised his mentorship. I learned silence could feel like drowning. He wrote the rules, enforced them, and handed me a pen I wasn't allowed to use. So I began collecting what he never imagined could speak, without me. Stay with me, because the truth you're about to hear will test every assumption. The warehouse office smelled like burnt coffee and cold printer ink. I'm Elena Park, 35, operations lead at Carver Logistics. My boss, Craig Halden, loved numbers, power, and being seen as the man who fixed everything. Early injustice came quiet. He reassigned my largest client after I refused after-hours drinks, then cut my overtime. To everyone else, he was efficient. To me, he was a closed door with a grin. Unwritten schedules became penalties. I was suddenly needed less, told to coach new hires without credit, then left off emails I used to lead. Craig said I'd lost hustle. He copied HR Director Monique Sue, writing in corporate poetry about alignment. My protests looked like excuses next to his neat charts. At home, I rehearsed numbers, revenue I'd pulled in, returns I'd reduced. Evidence, if only anyone wanted to see. He called me into his glass-walled office at 6:58 a.m., before the floor buzzed alive. You're plateauing, Craig said, sliding a printed rubric my way. But I can guide you, if you're flexible. The word hung like a leash. I answered, measured, refused clear lines, and agreed to measurable targets. He nodded, eyes flat. Minutes later, my calendar filled with meetings that overlapped, guaranteeing failure recorded in my name. Whispers began, Elena's dropping balls. A pattern Craig narrated at stand-ups, we need urgency, while looking at me. He praised others for work I'd drafted, then told me to learn from their follow-through. I documented everything, screenshots, timestamps, my versions of files and the final decks he presented. Still, he tightened the ground. Access credentials changed. I'd discover outages only when my pass failed and Craig's eyebrow lifted. Pressure metastasized. A vendor I'd nurtured for years went silent, then reappeared thanking Craig for taking ownership. He CC'd me, adding, let Elena shadow. My rent notice sat on my counter, unpaid. I almost went to HR, but his name sat above the intake form, all concerns routed through the supervising director. And then, the sound outside, shattered the calm. A pallet jack screeched, then clanged, and a camera light blinked. Our compliance pilot had installed aisle cameras last quarter, Craig's brainchild to reduce shrinkage. Few knew a small test unit faced our office corridor, capturing reflections in the glass. That morning, I saw it in the monitor loop, Craig sliding my proposal into his bag the night before. He'd present it today at a corporation. Tiny timestamp, my file name peeking from a corner. Not definitive, yet. Enough to move carefully. I reached out to Andre Bell, our senior dispatcher with a memory like a ledger and a dislike for bullies. He'd once warned me, the floor hears what walls try to hide. I showed him the frame. Andre didn't flinch. Get the original. Prove chain of custody. Don't accuse, verify. He connected me with Lena Whitcomb in compliance, a meticulous auditor whose hobby was dismantling loopholes with silk gloves. Lena met me in a quiet conference room that smelled of lemon cleaner and caution. "You're asking me to review footage that includes an executive," she said, measured. I told her about the transfers, the late-night messages, and the flexible offer. She didn't blink. "We'll follow policy, you'll follow the truth." She requested the footage directly from the vendor, not through Craig's team, citing the pilot's independent oversight clause. Craig sensed drift. "We're a team, Elena," he said at stand-up, shoulder light against mine. "If you're struggling, ask for help, privately." He announced a new mentorship pathway he'd lead. Applause rippled. He glanced at me like a judge offering mercy. I smiled, took notes, and replied to emails with surgical politeness. I scheduled check-ins, recorded outcomes, and routed summaries to shared folders with version histories he couldn't easily erase. He tightened control. My badge failed at the printer station. "Security glitch," he shrugged. He invited a colleague of mine, Priya Shah, to present a plan I'd drafted. Priya looked apologetic. Craig called it cross-training. My debate club voice from another life whispered, "Define the terms, anchor the proof." I asked IT for access logs citing a project pre-audit. They complied, unaware they'd just opened a floodgate. Lena returned with footage, clean and direct. Craig, 9:41 p.m., removing my proposal folder, then sending a late email to corporate titled "My Framework." She paired it with metadata tying file lineage to my account, then to his edits. "We're not done," Lena said. "Policy requires that harassment claims bypass direct supervisors via the ethics portal." The very rule he used against her was now aimed at him. We filed together, timeline, footage, emails, access logs, performance rubrics, and my original drafts. Monique from HR joined the review. Her face wore that practiced blend of concern and neutrality. "We'll proceed under confidentiality," she said, tapping the policy binder. Craig pinged me mid-meeting, "Stop involving others. This ends badly for you." I took a screenshot and let Lena see. She nodded, logging it with quiet precision. The floor hummed oblivious. I worked like a surgeon, fixed routing errors, handed off clean dispatches, delivered a small win that corporations had been chasing for weeks. I documented every step, forwarding results to shared channels. Craig tried to reframe reality. "Glad my guidance is finally landing," he wrote publicly under my update. Andre slid by on a forklift, eyebrows raised as if to say, "Not much longer now." An internal calendar invite appeared, performance review, immediate, called by Craig, CCing HR but marking it optional. I walked in to find a printed warning waiting. "Declining performance, insubordination, failure to collaborate," he recited, confident. He leaned back, the temple of his fingers a small cathedral of certainty. I asked to record the meeting. He refused. I took notes. He smirked, signing the warning with a flourish, pushing it across. I didn't sign. "I'll respond in writing," I said, voice steady as a metronome. Craig's jaw tightened. "Refusing acknowledgement escalates consequences." "Acknowledging isn't an agreement," I answered. Outside, forklifts beeped like impatient metronomes. He ended with threat-soft words, "Think carefully about your future here." I left without allowing his fear to hitch a ride. Down the hall, Lena waited with a sealed envelope and a look that said timing. The envelope contained the audit summary, footage snapshots, file lineage maps, access log anomalies, and a policy index tabbed like a legal spine. HR scheduled a formal investigatory meeting with Craig present but restricted his access to our systems pending review. Whispers stirred. The warehouse, it turns out, is an orchestra of listening. Andre handed me a thumb drive from a vendor rep, Craig pitching his framework weeks earlier. The day we met in HR's larger conference room, sunlight glazed the long table like stage lights. Craig arrived in a navy tie and a story about misunderstood leadership. He called me reactive and resentful. I kept to the facts and the timestamps. When Lena presented the file lineage like a family tree, his smile iced over. One truth never moved, hidden in plain sight. He lunged toward nuance. I took the folder to secure it. I sent the email to expedite. I mentored her. HR asked why the folder left the office after hours, why metadata showed his username overriding authorship, why he emailed corporate at 10 p.m. using language copied verbatim from my draft. He tried to drown facts in adjectives. They floated. The thumb drive entered the record like a bell. Andre's statement was simple. I watched him present her framework to the vendor on June 3rd. He said, I. Monique read the harassment messages aloud, each line a stone landing in quiet water. Policy citations followed: retaliation, misappropriation, hostile conditions. Craig stopped interrupting, then started again, then realized interruption itself was evidence. Lena concluded, the controls you implemented produced the proof that limits you now. Silence met the sentence. Reversal arrived without spectacle. Craig was placed on leave pending termination review, access revoked, laptop surrendered. HR restored my client accounts, nullified the warning, and initiated a compensation review for lost income and credit. I exhaled a month I'd been holding. And then, every voice went silent. Even forklifts seemed to pause, the warehouse settling around a truth that no longer needed to shout. Resolution moved like paperwork but felt like a sunrise. HR issued a written apology acknowledging retaliation and theft of work product. Compliance forwarded its findings to legal with recommendations. I received back pay, restored seniority, and public authorship on the framework that started everything. A memo landed across the company, harassment reporting now routed to an independent ethics line with anonymous options. Craig's mentorship pathway shuttered without ceremony. Afterward, people approached quietly. Priya squeezed my hand. New hires asked how to keep notes, how to speak without screaming. I told them the truth: fear is loud, but evidence is patient. Andre bought cafeteria coffees, grumbling that the corporation finally caught up with the floor. Lena returned to her spreadsheets, the kind of hero who hates capes. I walked past Craig's empty office and found it brighter. I kept one thing from that night on my desk, the tiny screenshot of a time-stamped reflection in glass. Not a trophy, just a reminder that power is only as strong as our willingness to let it operate unobserved. The warehouse lights flickered on schedule. My badge worked. The printer warmed. And for the first time in months, I believed that the door marked "Supervisor" no longer hid a trap. Lesson: when someone writes the rules to shield their advantage, the clearest way through isn't rage, it's record. Power retreats where proof stands. If this story gripped you, subscribe now, so you never miss the next voice of bias revealed.